Well, Paul, no secret, the rock and metal world lost arguably the greatest influence in our time, Eddie Van Halen. And, as a guitar player and somebody that was certainly came up in his era, I'm assuming huge influence on everything you've done, especially even when you go back to like Green Tinted 60s Mind. That was, that intro was so different from what everybody was doing, and the backwards masking, it was so different, which comes out of stuff that everybody kind of saw Eddie Van Halen doing different things. So for you as a player, I'm not going to ask you were you influenced, because I know you were, but talk a little bit about his influence and, what his passing means to you as a player, not necessarily as a, human being.
Yeah. Well, at that time, I couldn't figure out the solos,
right.
And I'd get a thing here or there, but they were, I was 11 years old when the first Van Halen record came out. And I had seen my uncle, because my uncle had the record, and he was much more advanced guitar player, and he had done the tapping thing. What was it? I get the real strong. So I kind of had an idea what that was. Now, I couldn't do it, but at least it wasn't a big mystery.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing I would gravitate towards would be the rhythm parts.
Okay.
Because those I had a fighting chance of figuring them out. And just the way Eddie played, some stuff that on the surface would be simple. You really got me is a Kinks song with 2 chords. But the way the Kinks would play, or it's in G, or whatever key it's in, they'd play like a power chord, where Eddie would play it.
Right.
And he has this thing where he'd do a quick chicka right into a single note.
Right.
And that's really hard to do, to get that. Like hardly any of my, well, I'm working on it. I show that kind of stuff to my students a lot, where I make them do a chicka and then a single note, and that humbles people.
Right.
Like, oh man, I can do a note and I can do a chicka, but to do them together and have the transition be clean and that quick, and that's something that I developed from learning Eddie stuff. And but it's just a sense of time too, like a song like "Little Dreamer," like 3. Or what was the one? And that's jazz,
right?
He's over like the minor 5 chord. I mean, I'm getting chills just hearing that. And that he got that from his dad, because his dad was a jazz clarinet player.
Sure.
And so a lot of what he does is really informed by growing up in the jazz house. He was trained as a classical pianist. So, where he was coming from in terms of what he heard was pretty sophisticated. And of course, then you add in a big dose of rock and roll, Black Sabbath, and 10 years after, the shuffles he had were so amazing. Stuff like the Full Bug. Of course, the thing with Eddie too is Eddie Van Halen was Eddie Van Halen and Alex Van Halen,
right?
And that's made, to me, that's no more. That's so apparent whenever you hear Eddie without Alex, which is like you hear Eddie do the Beat It solo.
Uh-huh.
The first time I heard the Beat It solo, I remember I was a kid. And I was like washing the dishes or something, and I go like, "Man, who's this guy ripping off Eddie?" because it was so it didn't feel like him.
Right.
It sounded like the licks, and obviously it was him, but without Alex, it's like half the soul was missing, and it didn't have the same life,
right,
that it had when Eddie was playing with Alex.